So I'm currently standing on the 5th level of this multi-generational passive ICF house that I've been DIY building for the last little while. And today I'm going to get into all the nerdy details, all the building science details on how I'm going to be able to heat this 10,000 square feet with basically the equivalent of a hairdryer, like legitimate, with a hairdryer running 24/7. If it was just the hairdryer, it would actually heat this this multi-generational home that I'm building. So let's go ahead and get into it. So yes, I will freely admit that it seems crazy that I would be able to heat this much space, especially as you can see over my shoulder, I've got snow. I do live in a zone 6 building climate, zone 6. So in terms of our wintertime temperatures, it gets cold. I mean, last week it was down to 0 degrees. This morning was in the teens. It's been in the teens for our lows for weeks, for a number of weeks now. So yes, it does get cold. So how is it that I'm able to pull off this little miracle of science when homes down here that are 10,000 square feet, yeah, they're paying at least $500 for natural gas to be heating their homes each month. So how is it that I'm able to pull this off? Well, number one, one of the big reasons why is because I'm basically building a giant Yeti cooler. And so anyone who understands or who has ever had a Yeti cooler understands that they do an amazing job with their insulation. And you're able to keep cold things cold for days and days at a time, hot things hot for days and days at a time because of the insulation. So what's different about my walls? Well, my walls are ICF walls, so insulated concrete form walls. So that means that I've got 2.5 inches of EPS foam on the outside, 2.5 inches of EPS foam on the inside, which on paper, yeah, it's not that much insulation. It's only like an R20, R21. And then, but what I do have is 8 inches of concrete. And therein, that lies one of my secrets on how I'm going to be able to heat this thing, because I have a thermal battery. That's one of the differences between my house and a Yeti cooler, is the Yeti cooler has awesome insulation, but no thermal battery. I've got 8 inches of concrete that stores heat, slowly releases that heat at night. So I'll be able to heat my house during the day, and without any supplemental heat at night, my thermal battery, the 8 inches of concrete, will continue to radiate heat out into the living space to keep us nice and comfortable until the next day when, let me go ahead and give you some of that brightness, some of that free, yeah, that's called free passive solar heat. So I've built a passive home. Some of the unique things that I've done is over here on my west walls that you see down there, I have 0 windows, because while the sun is great for heating, even in the winter, you can actually overheat with windows on the west wall. So instead, I've got a lot of windows on the south wall. So this is where most of the bedrooms will be for this multi-generational living. And so you can see all of these bedrooms, each one of these bedroom windows, let's get over here, you can see, well, downstairs, I've got all my roof panels right here, so you really can't see how far that sun is coming. But if I was on the level below, you'd be able to see that I've got that free solar heat coming in 16 feet. So it's close to the end of January right now. And I've got that much free solar heat coming in. It's about, on a sunny day, a little over 20,000 BTUs is coming in for free. And so that's one thing that is going to help. But that's not sufficient, but it is free. So let's talk about what is my plan B for the days when it's cloudy. Because when it's cloudy, that 20,000 BTUs drops down to about a 5,000 BTU per hour. So what's plan B for on the cloudy days when I'm not getting a lot of that free solar heat? So, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a 5-story multi-generational passive ICF house. And the 5th story is, I don't know if I should truly call it a story, but I will, because I can. So it's our crawl space. And I say crawl space with air quotes around it because it's actually 6'2". And my home is 72 feet long by 34 feet wide, and so I have almost 2,500 square feet of that quote-unquote crawl space that is 13 feet below grade. The reason why 13 feet below grade is an important number to remember is I'm just giving you some of the different views of these mountains. Absolutely amazing up here. Hey, look out that window. It's like you're in a tree house. I digress. So going back to the crawl space. So my crawl space is 13 feet below grade, which where I live means that I've got annual soil temperatures that stay nice and stable at 52 degrees. That 52 degrees represents free passive heat, free geothermal heat coming from the earth all year round. Now, most people would agree that 52 degrees is not considered hot. However, when you add some of the marvels of engineering called heat source pumps, so you can either go with a water one or with like a mini split heat pump that actually pulls the heat from the air, then that makes it so that the amount of energy that I would put into a regular hair dryer, instead, if I put that same electricity into either a geothermal heat pump or into just the mini split air heat pump, then I'm going to be extracting 4 to 5 times as much heat as what a standard hair dryer would produce. So in essence, by putting that electricity into a mini split heat pump, I now have five hair dryers, the equivalent of 5 hair dryers going to help supplement the heat. So that's the plan. Actually, that's not even plan B, that's plan C. Because now I'm going to show you the other reason why I'm going to be able to heat this thing for $60 a month, 10,000 square feet, $60 a month in a climate zone 6, where sometimes we get temperatures below freezing down to 5 or so. So let me show you my plan B. Plan A on heating it is all of my south-facing windows. So that's plan A is all of these south-facing windows. Plan B is, actually, you know what? I'm going to tease plan B real quick because I need to also explain a little bit more about some of the building science that will make this possible. So I need to start with Steve Basic's favorite word is C for continuity. Steve loves to talk about continuity because you can have the best insulated home in the world, one with 8-inch concrete thermal battery effect as well. But if you don't do a decent job sealing up your windows and your windows leak, then you've kind of shot yourself in the foot, because all of the air that you have conditioned, all of that heat that you have conditioned during the winter, if you don't do a good job of sealing around your windows, or depending on the type of window that you buy. So if you buy the sliding windows for egress, so this particular window is going to be an egress window, I could go with just the regular sliding windows. But if you've ever owned one of those sliding windows, those suckers literally leak like a sieve. You can see the dust just piling up along the edges, and that dust isn't coming from the inside, it's coming from the outside. And that means air is coming from the outside. And that means the air on the inside can also go to the outside. So in the winter, the air that you paid to condition to a nice 72 degrees or whatever you keep your thermostat at, that's now heating the outside if you don't properly air seal your windows and get the right kind of windows. So I'll be actually putting casement windows into these better windows as egress, because, and the reason, I know that casement windows are a pain in the butt to have to unscrew them, etc. The only time that anybody should ever open up the windows in this house is if there's a fire. And so you might be thinking, well, what about fresh air? Don't you want to have fresh air? Absolutely, I want to have fresh air, but I want to have fresh air that comes into the house under my conditions. Meaning, so for example, your mouth technically was built for eating and for talking. It wasn't built for breathing. Where you want to breathe is right there through your nostrils. That's what was built for breathing, because we've got this filtration system that preconditions the air before it hits our lungs, whereas if you breathe through your mouth, there's not as much preconditioning. There's also a filtration system up here to knock down some of the pollens and pollutants before they get down to your lungs. There's not really as much of a filtration system in your mouth. So for this house, I'll be putting in what's called an HRV system, a heat recovery ventilator. And That allows me to take my conditioned air that I've paid for the heat in the winter, and as all of that stale air goes out of the house, so each room will have, well, each bathroom, each kitchen, each area like that will actually have some pipe that goes down to my HRV. That sucks out all the stale air, and then the fresh air gets delivered to each one of the living rooms and to the bedrooms, so that we're getting this constant source of fresh air, and all the stale air is being sucked out. As that stale air is being sucked out, it goes through the HRV, it transfers its heat to the incoming cold air. And my particular HRV is going to be 95% efficient, which means that if my 72-degree air is going out, then I've got about 68-degree air coming in, even though the outside air temperature might only be 0 degrees or 10 degrees. And so that's something that's also going to help make it so that my monthly electrical bill for heating is only going to be around $60. Might even be less once I get to my secret that I'm about to share with you. Another thing that's also going to help is that right above here where my ceiling is going to be, I'll be putting in an Intello air barrier. So basically it's an intelligent air barrier that makes it so that, because I do have a 5-story home, the stack effect, which means the air pressure coming up all of those levels, is intense. So up here, there's going to be a lot of air that's going to want to get out. I want to be able to control that air going out under my terms. So I'll be putting an Intello air barrier across the entire ceiling. And what that does is that makes it so that the air is not able to pass up through it. Vapor, yes, it's an intelligent vapor barrier. So I will be able to make it so that in my warm roof, because it's going to be a warm roof system. And I'm making other videos about that, so you can watch that. But just know that the Intello air barrier makes it so that I'm not going to have massive leakage, because it's a continuous barrier across this entire roof. I'm not going to be leaking all of my hot air out of the top floor unless I want to. So I say unless I want to, because I also have 2 6-inch pipes. So let's see if I can point to it right up there. So there's one of them, and then there's a twin on the other side. Because, like I said, the stack effect is going to be pretty intense up here. We're going to end up with a lot of vapor up here. I want to be able to let that vapor out. So I can either let the vapor out, or I can pay for a dehumidifier. Dehumidifier is plan B. Plan A is I'll be able to use those during the day to let the humidity out if it gets to be too high up here. Also, another thing with the HRV is I'm going to just slightly overpressurize the house so that the incoming air is more than the outgoing air, so that the house is slightly pressurized. Because no matter how well you build this thing, I mean, yes, these are 8-inch concrete walls. Yes, I'm going to be doing liquid flashing, Proseco liquid flash around all my windows so that they're nice and sealed tight. My doors will be the type of doors that when you open and close it, there's actually 3 different latches that sucks it in. I have the casement windows that are also sucked in, but you're still going to have some air leakage. So I want the air to be leaking out. I want my conditioned air to be going out rather than unconditioned air to be coming in, because that unconditioned air is really cold right now. And it also brings in pollen, it also brings in pollutants. And before the air goes through my HRV system, it's going to be going through a really heavy-duty filtration system. So probably not HEPA quality, but pretty darn close to HEPA quality. And if there's any wildfires, which we do get wildfires in this area, we also get the wildfire smoke from California. And so on days like that, I'll be able to put in a carbon filter, and that filters out even the smell. So I want the air to be coming in and out on my terms, and I want it to be filtered. And anyone who lives in a passive house with a HRV system says that it is the most fresh air, best smelling home that they have ever experienced. So looking forward to that. All right, so I promised you I was going to share with you the secret on how I'm probably going to be heating this thing for even less than $60 a month. So how am I going to pull that off? Well, because I have another solar furnace. And this other passive solar furnace, let me show you, is going to be 72 feet long And it is going to be, so it's all along there, and it's going to be 26 feet tall, and it's going to be 12 feet wide, and it's called a greenhouse. So since I already wanted to put in a greenhouse, and it's actually going to be a tropical greenhouse, so we're going to be able to grow tropical food year round, even in the snow. And I'll make another video on how we're going to be able to pull off that little miracle. But during the daytime, especially on sunny days, even when it's like 10 degrees in a greenhouse, it'll get up to 90 degrees. So I've got 72 feet long, 26 feet high, 12 feet deep of hot air. That's a huge amount of hot air that's going to be 90 degrees. So another part of my system is with that HRV is I'll actually precondition the outside cold air. It'll go through basically an aluminum tube going through my greenhouse. By the time it travels that 72 feet long, then the heat from the greenhouse has now been transferred to the incoming air. It has conditioned it to close to 90 degrees. That 90 degrees then goes into my HRV. My HRV then distributes that air all throughout the house. So just the reason for the aluminum tube in the greenhouse is because you don't want the humidity. Sometimes you do, but normally you don't want the humidity from your greenhouse going into your house. Otherwise you'll end up with a house that's just too humid. And so the aluminum tube just makes it so that the outside air is going through the greenhouse, not picking up the humidity, but instead it's actually picking up the heat. Now with that said, I do live in a high mountain desert climate, so in the winter, it actually does get pretty darn dry in the house. But by having access to the greenhouse, I have access to a humidifier, a massive humidifier. So on some days, depending on the humidity levels in the house, I actually won't be pulling the air through my aluminum tube. Instead, I'll be pulling the air directly from the greenhouse so that I am able to add super oxygenated air, because all of those plants are pumping out a ton of oxygen, but I'll also be able to add humidity to the house to make it so that during the winter we don't have that dry, itchy skin, and instead we have nice, humid, we have air at the correct humidity level. It'll still go through filtration, but so when you combine everything that I've talked about, that's how I'm going to be able to, let's see the big houses down there. I don't know if you can see them. Anyways, the homes down there, yeah, they're going to be they're currently paying over $500 a month for natural gas to heat their 10,000 square feet. Whereas with all the details that I've just shared, I'm going to be heating my house for less than $60 a month. And depending on how many days that I end up with non-cloudy, which because I'm in a high mountain desert, there's a lot of those days that are non-cloudy. My guess is, and I will be tracking it, but my guess is my mini split heat pump, if I go the air route or the geothermal, if I go the route of pulling the heat out of the crawl space. And I've also run the calculations to know that with that much volume of crawl space, that even though I will have cold air going into the crawl space, that much volume is able to, that much contact with the earth is able to reheat the air. So it's not going to get too cold down in the crawl space. But with all of that, it's probably going to be less than $60 a month, because really my only source of heat, creating heat, will be those either the geothermal or the mini split heat pump. And then of course I will need to pay for the fans to push the air throughout, but even that, I may not actually need to pay for fans because of the stack effect. So remember, I've got these two 6-inch pipes up here, and because of the stack effect, there's going to be a lot of pressure. There may actually be enough pressure from those two 6-inch pipes to pull a lot of the air through this system and pull it through my HRV down below. We'll have to do the testing to see if the two 6-inch pipes are enough. Probably won't be enough, but they'll definitely be able to supplement during the daytime the fans that are working the HRV. So anyways, if you have any questions about this whole thing, and especially any suggestions, because that's one of wonderful things that I've learned about YouTube is you're never short. Most people are never short on giving suggestions and pointing out, oh, what about that weakness? What about this weakness? So be sure to leave any comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about my plan for heating this whole thing for basically the equivalent of one hairdryer, heating 10,000 square feet on this multi-generational passive ICF house. And be sure to like and subscribe so you can follow along on this insanely crazy journey as I do this thing and build it mostly on my own. So anyways, thanks for watching.